Lady, so far lady. And gentlemen, first we have to thank the host, Ateret Torah congregation, Rabbi Zvi, Rabbi Michael Toledano, Ateret Torah board, the Kol Torah congregation, Rabbi Chabusha, President Sidney Levy, and the board, Gil Zvuluni included, but for technical support, and of course those who devoted the time and effort to come this Sunday Eve to partake in this very special lecture dedicated to the memory, Eloi Nishmat, my uncle Yaakov, Jacques, and his wife Rachel Simon, and their two little boys, Jean-Claude and Richard, who perished in Auschwitz in 1944. Hashem Yikom Damam. Rabbi Akiva, I just inserted something right before. Rabbi Akiva said, "B'chol levavcha, v'chol nafshecha, v'chol modecha, afilu notel et nafshecha." Even if it takes your soul away from you. And when he was executed at age 120, Haya shohek, he was smiling. Amru lo talmidav Rabbeinu ad kan, here too. אז הוא אומר, כל ימי הייתי מצטער, מתי יבוא פסוק זה לידי והקיימנו. When will I reach? I was all my life afflicted. I was in pain. When will this pasuk come up and I'll be able to fulfill it? ועכשיו שבא לידי לא הקיימנו. Now I get that pasuk, that's my pshat. in לבביך, נפשך, אפילו נוטל את נפשך. Parentheses, once somebody made up their mind to do Al Kiddush Hashem, it does not hurt. There's no pain. Rabbi Maharam of Rothenburg says, and Rabbi Don Yitzchak of Rabbanel, I think, the old one, the one that we know from the Pirushim, says he knows that for a fact. Somebody was, by the Inquisition, they were going to hang him, and he was tied up, and he was hanging, so he said, and then something happened, there was a decree, a stay, or some sort of thing, and they took him down, and they went to Rabbi Yitzchak, and he asked him, what happened? Nothing. Did you feel anything? Not a thing. Once the dedication goes that way, Kiddush Hashem, he's already sublimed. That was short. A very famous poem that we all know, and this is exactly the right crowd, symbolizes the depth and of dedication, of total devotion of a Jew to Hashem. It was written by Avraham ibn Ezra. In a very intimate monologue, he vividly depicts the human feeling in the introduction of the dedication poem he writes. We can't do the whole poem, you all know it. Lecha eli teshukati becha heshki ve'avati lecha libi vechilyotai lecha rochi venishmati lecha yadai lecha raglai umimeka hi techunati lecha atzmi lecha. Everybody knows it, so I'll skip it and we save time. For you is my yearning, teshukati, my desire, heshki ve'avati. For you is my heart, my kidneys. There's a list. My heart and my kidneys, my spirit and my soul, my hands and my feet. Because of you is my character. For you are my bones, atzmi, dami, ori, gviati, my skin and my body. For you are my eyes, lecha einai v'rayonai v'tzurati, the whole list of my person. You are the blood, lecha, for you are lecha dami, lecha halbi, keseh akriv ve'olati, I will give it as an offering, like a sheep. Lecha yachid belisheni, lecha todah yechidati, and he continues, and then esofna et avonotai behazdecha yom asifati. Gather my sins when I am gathered to my people. B'yom lechti lefanecha, when I walk before you, et halech lifnei Hashem be'atzot ha'chaim. That's the same context. רצנה את הליכתי, find my walk favorable. ואם עושה רצונך, תנה שכר פעולתי. With those who fulfill you will make the reward of my deeds. ותשלח מלאכיך החן ויצאונה לעומתי, send your angels and they would come and greet me and say שלום בואכה, יאמרו בכל אחד בביאתי, in one voice, ברוכים הבאים. They will bring me to Gan Eden, that's where I'll sit. אור גנוז לפניך ותחת צל כנפיך. And this is a total devotion, itemized. Heart, blood, skin, this, kidneys, eyes, the whole feet, hand. And one of the lines he says, Lecha ezak, becha edbak. I will pray to you, scream to you, and with you, in you I will adhere. Vatem adevekim, becha edbak. Ade shuvi le'admati, until I return to my ground, to my spot in the ground. Lecha ani be'odi hai. I'm yours while I'm still alive. Ve'af ki acharei moti, even after I die. Yours. On the year of his Petirah, Ibn Ezra writes, this was found in his own handwriting, as he paraphrases the pasuk, Ve'avraham ben Hamesh shanim v'shiv'im shana betzeto meharan. This is for Avraham Avinu, and of Parashat Noah. In his very special style, Ibn Ezra writes, Ve'avraham, his name was Avraham Ibn Ezra, Avraham Meir, Ben Ezra Meir, Meir Ezra. Anyway, Avraham, and Avraham is 75 years old, Betzeto meharon af ha'olam, from the anger of this world. Tonight we are dealing with a very somber, angry, gloomy period in Jewish history that happened 75 years ago. However, in a great contrast to the darkness and tragedy, we see an eternal light, a ner tamid that guides us and will guide our children for eternity. Their greatness cannot be measured. It can only be taught and treasured. Those days of awe proved beyond all doubt what strength of spirit is all about. Rabbanim and teachers who were able to translate the purpose of man regardless of state. Their strength of spirit, courage, and deep faith guided them through the terrible valley of death. The great Rabbi Halberstam, the Kloisenberger Rebbe, in Mildov, that was after the liberation, soon after the war, saw a girl, a survivor, a young Jewish girl without socks, and took off his own and said, it's not proper for a Jewish girl to walk without socks, and gave her his own socks. He was the same rabbi who, during the death march on Tisha B'Av 1944, ran endless kilometers while holding his leather shoes in his hands. And when asked, and people used to kill just to get shoes for the death march, and he has, and he's holding them in his hand. When asked why is he holding his shoes in his hands, he replied, it's Tisha B'Av. Leather is not allowed. He was the same one who suffered an almost fatal beating while praying Musaf on Simchat Torah while working in Auschwitz in the work detail. He fell to the ground and did not budge. While he lay motionless on the ground, the Jewish people around him felt he was alive and asked him, why did he not motion or say that he was alive? Motioning with his fingers to his lips, he replied, Musaf. He didn't even say, I'm in the middle of something. When he finished Musaf, he went 7 times around the tree to fulfill the minhag of Hakafot, holding a fragment of Mishnah in his hand and saying, Ana Hashem Oshiana. This is unusual strength of spirit. There were many such similar stories, but how did they deal with the issues? Is Pikuach Nefesh doche everything? What are the parameters of Pikuach Nefesh? Are there parameters of Pikuach Nefesh? When the Torah says, Asher yaseh otam ha'adam v'chai b'hem, and the rabbis learned, Velo sheyamut b'hem, is Torah suspended? No Torah. I have to live. No Torah. Yom Kippur, Pikuach Nefesh, we know the halachot more or less, but is it really? Rabbis and Jewish scholars are fascinated by the almost unattainable levels to which Holocaust rabbis reached in order to respond to the various halacha inquiries presented to them. The depth and sensitivity with which the rabbis dealt with these questions are awe-inspiring. One cannot even begin to fathom the difficulties and intricacies of giving a psak halacha. The process of analyzing complex situations is so difficult that only people gifted with a keen sense of logic and deep understanding can approach an issue, examine it, and consider all factors and opinions previously raised on the subject. This is what is meant by the words of Yeshayahu HaNavi. Et mi yoreh de'ah ve'et mi yavin shemuah. Who will give an opinion and who will understand what was heard? This is the duty of all of those who render a psak halacha. Yoreh de'ah, give an opinion. Yavin shemuah, will understand a nuance or implication. This was said about ordinary pesakim and halachot. How much more so when people's lives are at stake. This certainly applies when the dangers are imminent and the effects of such a pesak have far-reaching ramifications. The scholars and illustrious Rabbanim and Dayanim during the period of Churban Europa went to great lengths to uphold the dictates of our venerated poskim and did abide by the dictum of V'chai Bahem, to live through the impossible, to think clearly in the face of uncertainty, to settle a person's mind in a most unsettling situation. They were able to live under the threat of the sword and present a pointed and clear decision. This presentation attempts to give you a microscopic glimpse of the contemporary challenges. The devastation is everywhere. Death is a daily occurrence. The questions are extraordinary, and timely responses are critical. Really interesting the way we just read that. The next one, this is the introduction to the whole topic. Mi yemar de dama didach sumak tefei, dilma dama de ahu gavra sumak tefei. This is Gemara. Gemara goes back. This is Rabbi, so 3rd century. So we're going back to 2,000 years, about 1900 some years. Somebody came in front of Rabbi and told him, Amarli Marid Dorai, the governor of my place, says, Zil ketale liflania, go kill this guy. An order. Ve'ila, and if you're not going to do that, katelina lach, I'm going to kill you. What should I do? Halacha, what should I do? Amar le, so Rabbi answered, Likteluch velo tiktol. They should kill you, and you should not kill somebody else. Why? Mi yemar de damad idach somak tefei. Who says your blood is redder? Dilma damad de au gavra somak tefei. Maybe his blood is redder. Simple. Ki atar Rav Dimeh came later and explained it. Amar Rabbi Yochanan lo shanu ela shelo bishat gezerat malchut. This applies in normal times where there's no decree. Aval persecution. Aval bishat gezerat malchut, when there is persecution, afilu mitzvah kala yahareg ve'al yavo. Even the smallest mitzvah, it is incumbent on a person to give his life. We'll explain that in a minute. Ki ataravin, another person came and explained what Rabbi Yochanan, same one, explained. Afilu shelo bishat gzerat malchut. Even there is no decree, royal decree. Lo amru ela betzina. Only in, not in public. Aval beperesya. But if it's done publicly, afilu mitzvah kala yareg ve'al yavo. Even a small mitzvah, a person must give his life away. We know shvichut damim, gilui arayot, avodah zarah, yareg ve'al yavo. He says even a small one. Umay mitzvah kala, what's a simple mitzvah? Amar Rav Abba v'Yitzhak Amar Rav, afilu lishenuye arakta de mesana. Even to change the color of the shoelace. If it's come through persecution, you are Jewish, you have to wear black ones. You normally wear brown, now all Jews wear black. If it has to do with persecution, even that, and that's in public. That is Yareg Val Yavo. V'kama peresya, and what's the amount of public? Amar Rav Yochanan, Amar Rabbi Yaakov, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, en peresya pechuta me'asara bnei adam. Public is not less than 10 people. Peshita, of course, it has to be a crowd. Israelim ba'ina, they have to be Jews. Dechtiv v'nigdashti betoch bnei Israel. Among the Jewish people is when you do Kiddusha. If you're with the Goyim, they won't be impressed in either case. And this was the translation of that. Now, יפקוד השם אלוקי הרוחות לכל בשר איש על העדה אשר יצא לפניהם ואשר יבוא לפניהם ואשר יוציאם ואשר יביהם ולא תהיה עדת השם כצאן אשר אין להם רועה. God should give a leader who will be able to do that. And this is Rabbi Ashri Alav Shalom. The picture was taken when he was still a Shalita. He passed away in New York 2003. Before that, I want to address a minor concept. What is a minor concept? So there is a story of Rabbi Sevy, whom I met in Chicago in 1972. He was taken to Auschwitz with his son, who lives in Seagate now. And the story goes that he took with him, they told him to take provisions for 3 days. He took his talit, his tefillin, food, whatever. They came to Auschwitz, and as you know, they disrobed him completely. They took everything away, and he finds himself with his pajama. What's with the talit? What's going to be? You can't wear a talit. They're going to kill you. So he got himself into the sorting detail. They used to sort the shirts and the pants and the whatever, and the hair and the glasses and the whatevers. And he finds his talit. His talit belonged to his grandfather, his father's father. He found it, Kemotze Shalal Rav. What a beautiful thing, my grandfather's talit. But he can't wear it, so he made a talit katan out of it. Made a little tzitzit to use the strings. He put it under the pajamas, the striped uniform. He's happy. My grandfather is watching over me. There was a Russian capo, which was at times worse than the Jewish capos, walking around with a nightstick, going back and forth, and an appel that could appel a roll call. that could take anywhere from 2 to 3 hours standing in the cold. And he's walking around, and he notices that Rav Meisel's clothing are bulging. So he picks up with his nightstick and he sees the strings. And he gives an earth-shattering scream. Was ist das? What is this? So Rav Meisel answered what it was. Das ist ein Gottskleid. It's a clothing of God, which sent the couple ballistic. Here, God, there is no God here. What are you talking about, God? Here, there's nothing. There's me, stick, and death. That's all it is. And he starts beating him up. He grabs him and he beats him up in his bunker, and then he stops. He looks at him and he says, You. Tell me, give me a sign, a reason that I should believe there is a God. If not, I'll kill you, and you'll be one of 10,000. And if you tell me a story, you'll survive. And after being beat up like that, the normal reaction would be, you beat me up. No. Rabbi just made a little tefillah and he said, Ribono shel Olam, I need a story now. He looks at him and said, I'll tell you a story. There was a little village. Somebody got sick in the little village. They needed a surgeon. And they brought the surgeon from a big city to operate on this guy. The patient is invited to a theater. They used to have theaters. Everybody watched this thing. Comes in a shoemaker. What's he cutting? He's cutting. I cut also. Let me take a look. He looks at this guy cutting, and the blood is running. What's he doing to him? It's a beautiful skin. What is it? Stitched up, cleaned up. Then he goes to the doctor and he asks him, I cut skin, but only the bad ones. I think it was a beautiful piece of skin. What did you do? So he says, I'm a surgeon, and this guy has a disease under his skin. I had to remove it. You can't tell from the top. The surface is clean. God is the surgeon. And we don't understand what he does. And he does surgeries, and we are shoemakers. We don't understand. Who knows what he is the surgeon. And besides that, this clothing I'm wearing, this God's Clyde I'm wearing, belonged to my grandfather. May he rest in peace. And he lived to a ripe old age of 105, 108, or something, of Kadui style, very old. And we asked him, how did you live so long? So he says, and he couldn't tell that to the couple, but he must have meant when he talked to the boys, Tamim tiyeh im Hashem Elokecha. I don't ask questions. I never ask questions. I'm told to do, I do halachot, I do festivals, I do tefillin, whatever they tell me, I do, because that's what it's supposed to do. Because if I'm going to ask God questions, He will tell me, Rabbi Tzvi, you want answers? Let me invite you up, and I'll give you all the answers. You'll understand all the answers. So I'm suggesting to you, Mr. Capo, don't ask questions, because God will invite you to give all the answers. We don't want to do that. We're going to live a normal life sometime. Everything will come down and we'll get it. So this bull of a person, I like that. Very good. You can keep your God's Clyde on, and I'm going to give you extra food. That's how he survived the rest of the war. There is a story with that talit. By the way, is a story with that talit. He was wearing it on a train, and one of the German officers, petty officer, sergeant, his name was Willie. And he pushed everybody in the train. They were going from one place to another. He pushed everybody there so he could stretch out and put his hand up on the bars. And everybody was just stuck to no end, like that. He sees Rav Meises go up with his thing sticking out, he takes it and tears it. And everyone on the train said, Willie, you did a bad thing with the rabbi. You're going to be punished. I'm going to be punished. Look at you, look at me. Rav Meisels is standing, no sitting room, no first class, and no coach, and no tourist class. He's standing and leaning his head on his son, La Zalman Leib, who lives in Seagate, and he can testify to the story. He leans on him, and the train is going hours and hours, 15, 20 hours, 25, everybody's standing exhausted. At one point, his son tells him, Tati, my shoulder is hurting. After 25 hours, Tati, he's like sardined already. Everything is already settled. My shoulders, can you lean on somebody else for a bit? Whatever. So he leans on the other guy, and here there is a hollow. Everybody was so exact on the puzzle that when he moved, became a hollow here. So there's a hole. Shortly thereafter, minutes after, there was an Allied air raid. And they were bombing around the train. A shrapnel went through the window, through this hollow, and chopped Willie's hands. And he was bleeding and screaming, and they told him, Willie! That's what happens when you play with a rabbi. That's what happened. He was screaming, bloody, very bloody. And that's what happened with the tzitzi. There was a parenthetical thought. Another little one, the Rabbanan, Chanukah. In Auschwitz, they used to have a game. The Nazis had a game. They used to give out a scoop of margarine to pick up with your hand, or put it in your little thing that you use for everything. Water, drinking, bathroom, all in this little cup. That if you could wash, you could. If not, you use it as is. Take your little scoop of butter, margarine, like that, which was one molecule away from Teflon, like the worst margarine you can get. Put it in and run. And when they finished, everybody was looking forward to the game. What was the game? They took the pot, the Nazi took the pot, threw it up in the air, and when it landed, everybody jumped on it to scrape a few things, whatever they could get from the sides, from the edges, from whatever. And this man that nobody ever bothered with, a little white, old man, oldish looking, and everybody looked old there, he dives at that pot, and he's beating and doing, and he scrapes, and everybody's on top of him. And then the end of the game was a gunshot in the roof, in the ceiling. When that is heard, everybody goes back to their barracks, end of game. Takes out his pistol, the Nazi, give a thing, up, everybody goes. Everybody relaxes, and he's there, all bleeding, smiling, all beat up, torn, holding his little margarine. The guy's nuts. Everybody was saying, the way he's told, the story is that the guy's mad. He goes to his barrack, goes with his thing, takes out, in his hand there is this margarine, and he takes out from the torn clothing he had, strings, and he's weaving them, making little strings. Another one, and another one. Then he drips into a container, a little nothing container, like that. Then he somehow managed matches, and he makes Lahadlik Ner Chanukah. That's why he did this. Lahadlik Ner Chanukah, little candles. Rabbi Ephraim Ashri was asked many questions. One of them, I will skip the script, you read it. And he was asked a very, very interesting question. There was the little suspicion that this tefillin will be burnt. Can we do that? Or just let him, whatever, 2 or 3 weeks, whatever it takes. The question comes to Rav Ashri, and Kedarko Kodesh, he gives a long dissertation. We don't have much time, but the way Halacha works, the name of the lecture is Halacha and Holocaust, dealing with life challenges. How do you deal with it? We were saying, is life suspended? Pikuach nefesh, is there a problem? Maybe he shouldn't wear them. Finished, gone, whatever. Or maybe not. Maybe they will give him some chiyut. Right? Maybe. What are the sides? He goes back to Avodah Zarah Yudchet Amud Aleph, and he quotes a passage, and he goes 7 pages. We'll just touch on a few, but this passage is a shocking passage. Everybody knows that story. Most people know the story. And the way he drew some preliminary conclusions or preliminary thoughts is fascinating. Tanu Rabbanan, rabbis learned. Keshechala Rabbi Yossi ben Kisma, Rabbi Yossi ben Kisma got sick. He was getting old. That's the same one that Amar lo Shalom, Ve'ezir lo Shalom, that I will not live anywhere else. Rabbi Yossi ben Kisma, who was the first in Gemara to have a Gilu Eliyahu Navi, very important man, a very big pious man. Rabbi Hanina ben Tradion went to visit him. So Rabbi Yossi told him, Hanina Achi, brother, Iyata Yodea, don't you know that this nation was designated to reign from Shamayim? They gave him the rulership from Shamayim. Echriva et beto, ושרפה את היכלו, והרגה את חסידיו, ואיבדה את טוביו, ועדיין היא קיימת. They're still around. They made a mess. Burned the temple and killed people, and they're still around. So they should tell you something. ואני שמעתי עליך, שאתה יושב ועוסק בתורה, ומקיל קהילות ברבים, וספר תורה מונח לך בחיקך, and you have a Sefer Torah, and you're giving lectures and speeches and sho'im. Amar lo, Hanina ben Tradion answers to him, Min ha-shamayim yirahamu. Min ha-shamayim yiraham Hashem. Amar lo, Rabbi Yossi ben Kisma tells him, Ani omer lecha dvarim shel ta'am. I'm giving you logic. Ve'ata omer li min ha-shamayim yirahamu. Be fine, be fine. I bought a $6 million home, and I'm making $2,000 a month, and now you're going to pay the mortgage? It doesn't work like that. How are you going to do? What's the logic? How does the logic work with you teaching and they saying you're not permitted, and you have your Sefer Torah? Tameh ani, I would wonder, im lo yisrefu otcha ve'et sefer haTorah shelcha ba'esh. I'll be surprised if they don't burn you with the sefer. Lo hayu yamim mu'atim, not many days after, Rabbi Yossi ben Kisma passed away, and all of the nobility of Rome in Yerushalayim went to his grave. Vehispidu hesped gadol, gave him fantastic eulogies. Ubahazaratam, when they came back from the funeral, Matza'uhu leRabbi Hanina ben Tradion, shehaya yoshev ve'osek b'Torah u'makil kehilot b'sefer Torah munach lo b'chiko. They saw him. Heviuhu, they brought him. Krachu b'sefer HaTorah, they wrapped him with the sefer. Ve'hikifu b'chavilei zemorot, and they put wood around him. Vehetzitu bahen et tahu, and they lit him up. There is another part of this, but Rav Ashri deals with one aspect of this. Almost obvious question. Rabbi Yossi ben Kisma knew their craziness. He knew how they operate. And he knew that the danger is imminent. And he told Rabbi Hanina ben Tradion, be careful. They might do this to you. How could Rabbi Hanina ben Tradion take the chance that this will happen? He's burning a Sefer Torah. You don't care about yourself, it's one thing. But a Sefer Torah, it doesn't work. So what answer did he give him? Min hashamayim yirahamu. There'll be a miracle. And there is a whole big question. Can we say Min hashamayim yirahamu when there is eminent, and they say there's a rumor, and are we allowed to give it? Can we sell tefillin, to mezuzot or Sefer Torah to a goy? We can't, because we don't know what he'll do with it. We don't know. I mean, Jack from Hawaii 5-0 had a mezuzah in his house because he thought it was protection. They're goyim to do that. But normally we don't know what they do with it, so it's difficult to do this. After a long dissertation, v'lachen mikol hanal, the whole speech that I had, back and forth, ideas, not ideas, against and for, I decided that they should send this guy tefillin. And I found out a week later that the doctor said when he put on his tefillin, he was elated. Why zechut, why have tefillin? Doesn't matter, foot, no foot. He needs both hands, he did the hands and all that. And unfortunately, 2 months later, the Nazis lit up the hospital with the doctor, with the patient, with everybody else, and the rabbi was beside himself. Did I do the right thing to tell him to send him tefillin? A week later, somebody shows up to the rabbi with the tefillin and told them 2 days before that, the patient, and everybody knew that something is imminent, he begged me, take this tefillin, bring it back to the rabbi. This was his halacha, and it has an effect. A little tiny one, an exchange from a train going to Auschwitz, from Kovna, same place. A man who was on the train and a man who was on the platform. He was chosen to go, he was chosen to stay for now. The man, a Hasidic guy, who got on the train, screams to his friend, Reb Moshe, I don't know what's going to be with me, but the chickens have to be fed. It's a deoraita, it's Tzar Baalei Chaim. Where the mind was in the face of devastation. Then we continue to another fantastic story in a minute. A real quick one, a kid. Rav Ashri says that he decided in ghetto of Kovna to do some kind of uplift, spirit, something. There's no games here, there's no Blue Mountain, there's no poker games, there's no Pirchei Agudas Yisrael, there is no afternoon activity. We'll do something. He made a group called Tiferet Bachurim, Glorious Bachurim. We're going to learn a little bit of sanity in this insanity. One of the kids was 11 years old, a bright boy, he says. Bright. And they learned halachot and things. And he goes to Rav Ashri and he tells him, Rabbi, maybe I could put on tefillin now, because I don't know if I'll make it to 13. Am I allowed? He goes through 7 pages. Magen Avraham, Chinuch, Katana Yodel Na'anea Belulav. A kid who knows to do lulav, you have to buy him a lulav. Tzitzit, you have to buy, even though it's only Chinuch. And tefillin are a little more complicated because you wear them. So tefillin tzarichot guf naki. You have to have the guf, but this kid knows. So I said you're allowed. If it bothers you so much, you should. You should wear it. And unfortunately, he did not make it to 13. Hashem yikom damo. That was the other question. And then we have another fantastic question here. It has to do, as you may guess, it has to do with a Kohen. Kohen was forced to give up his religion, and this is the essence of the question, and eventually fled, returned to his people. Can he be counted for minyan? Get the first aliyah as a Kohen, and do Nesiat Kapayim in the Chagim, or they do a Chagim. And they said the month of Nisan, the 28th day, the Nazis arrived in Lita. Soon after their feet stepped on the soil, they began their systematic murder and annihilation of the Jewish people as they pour their wrath. And this is a translation from the Hebrew. Shafach za'amo. Ulelo rachem destroyed kol chelkat tova bekerem Hashem, in the vineyard. Killing without mercy babies, toddlers, men, women, young, old, scholars, laymen, everybody. And everyone was the axe brought down. Yarad hagarzen, להשמיד ולהרוג, לאבד, להרוג ולאבד, every kind of horrific torture, death to the body and soul, starvation, captivity. Then, he keeps writing and explaining. Among the first casualty was a man and a woman who were murdered in one of those terrible days, and their only beloved son was the sole survivor. The Gentile maid succeeded in hiding and saving him from the cruel murderers. The boy, 17 years old, very embittered by the tragedy, and tragedies do that, get bitter, that befell his parents and family. He felt like a tree in a desert. Was very concerned that the Gentile maiden will eventually cease her kindness and surrender him to the German. It makes sense. 17, 18 years old. You don't know, she might turn on him. She might be tortured, she might be paid, something will happen. And the maid, she could not hide him. So she went to the priest. And he is going to sprinkle some water on him. The priest agreed, good idea. He assimilated, everything is fine, nothing, no embarrassment, everybody's happy, peaceful and secure, but the soul was restless. The sight of his parents being killed in front of him kept coming back. That's because they were Jewish and I'm Jewish and this is my parents, and very troubled. It was a nightmare. Can he continue? He doesn't know what to do. One day, he mustered up his courage and left the place, decided to come and live among his afflicted brethren in Kovna and tie his fate with theirs. He was fully prepared to share their pain and, if need be, come to the gates of heaven with them. It was at this point that I was asked if this man, born a Kohen, can be counted in a minyan and be honored with the first aliyah and go up to Nesiat Kapayim. And then he looks at it, the rabbi looks at it and says, look at that. We've had that in Gemara. Kohanim who served in Beit Chonio. Long story. To cut a very long story short, Beit Chonio was in Alexandria. And they served in an altar there. They used to make korbanot. Korbanot outside of Beit HaMikdash in Yerushalayim are called bamot. And you can't do that. And when you do a bama, you defiled. It's problems. So he said, we have to go back to Yoshiyahu HaMelech. Anybody who did the bamot could eat, because they're Kohanim, they could eat the korbanot, they could eat the truma, ach lo ya'alu cholkim ve'ochlim ve'lo makribim. They can't go on the mizbeach. It's like a balmum. Something happens spiritually. Back and forth, but this guy was forced. So I can't say that he's the same deen as the people there. I allowed him. 1944, when the ghetto was liquidated, the young man shared the faith of the rest of the Jewish people there. Hashem yikom damo. Another little interesting. We had this question in Spain. In Sfarad, during the times of the Inquisition, you look at a Siddur from that time, I think Tfilat Immanuel, one of them. I think, Alav Shalom, my father saw one. I think I saw one too, he pointed me at the one that has. In the back of the Siddur is Kaddish, Tfilat HaDerech, all these things that are occasional prayers. And those Siddurim in the back, they had Tfilah Nisrafim. They learned this by heart. Everybody knew that Tfilah. In case they are called to do the Auto da Fe, and they're going to be burned, Before burn, you say Shema and you say this. Or you say this and then you say Shema. That's how it is. Así no es. ¿Qué puedo? That's life. It's así de la vida and así de la muerte. That's how it works. Árboles lloran por lluvia y montañas por aires. They cry for this and they cry for air and for rain. That's what we have to do. So, Rabbi tells with deep sadness the date, October 29th, 1941, the Black Day. Mi'iten Rosh Yirmiyahu. He quotes, Mi'iten Rosh Shimayim ve'ani mekor dim'ah. They gathered everybody in the democratic plots, the place of democracy. 30,000 people. And suddenly, when all this is happening, this rebellion comes to him and he tells him, what is the proper blessing? Baruch ata Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam asher kishanu tzvotav v'tzivanu lekadesh et Hashem, like lehaniach tefillin, לקבוע מזוזה, or asher kishanu tzvotav v'tzivanu al kiddush Hashem, al mikra megillah, lishmoa kol shofar. What's the text? How do you do this bracha? Nobody ever did it. I never heard this. First time, and people do it only one time in their life. If they survive it, they say Agomel after that. Hodul Hashem Kitov. Back and forth, and he says, I have a story in his writing. He says, V'shamarta la'asot kechol asher yorucha. Rav Ashri recalls Rav Asher of Frankfurt, generation earlier, or even earlier than that, and he says that he did a long bracha. Baruch ata Hashem mekadesh shimcha barabim, after which a person must recite the Shema Yisrael and prepare for the final moment. Later he quotes the Shelah, Shnei Luchot Abrit, Horowitz, and says this is how it works. It's not al kiddush Hashem, lekadesh shemo barabim. That's the bracha. Soon after my instruction, Rav Ashri says, Rav Eliyahu went around to the people and told them the proper nosach of the bracha. Later he returned and told me that Rabbi Chana Wasserman, Hashem Yikom Damo, this is the one, said the same before he was shot in the 9th fortress. And he gave a big darush there. He was stopped in the morning, early morning, Masechet Nida. The Germans went in, and when they saw him, one told the other, das ist ein heiliger Mensch. He looks like a holy man, like it's a Moses. Das ist ein Moses. So one of them says, wir haben Ordnungs, we have orders. So forget it. And Moses, no Moses, we have to take him. Everybody walked with him, and before he was shot, he said, there must be in Shamayim, they think that we are holy people. We are korbanot for our brothers and sisters in America. So let us not think bad thoughts, because it will become pigul. Our korban will become worthless. We have to have V'ahavta Hashem Elokecha even now, Baruch Asher Kitshanu, and that's how it is. And he was shot. His son, who survived there, his son, Rav Ephraim, was shot with him, and there was Rab Simcha who was told, and I heard it from Rab Simcha. The Holy Chafetz Chaim, whom he visited, shortly after, Chafetz Chaim passed away in 1936. So he used to visit him, and he told him, when it comes to that, this is the bracha. Lekadesh shemo barabim. Then we have another question that comes up. I am a slave of Kadosh Baruch Hu. Somebody in Warsaw Ghetto asked a question. Can I say Shelo Asani Eved in Birkot HaShachar when I am experiencing exactly the opposite? They tell me what to do, what to wear, how to do, when to come, how to do this and that. Answer, the bracha was composed not for the physical. It's for the spiritual. Even in, how much more so that we must say this now to show them that we are in captivity. Even though we are in captivity, they can do what they wish. But our spirit is not theirs. And Kova Yeshuatenu lavo, and Tehillatenu lehigalot, Mirtz Hashem will be zocher to Geula Shelema. We always end up in a very serious note. Eretz al techasi damam. Earth, do not cover their blood. Ve'al yehi makom leza'akatam. And there should not be a place for their scream. Their scream will roll, and the blood will flow for all the generations. Likdoshim asher ba'aretz hema ve'adirei kol hefzi bam. The holy people who are there, and this is what we want. We hope for Geula Shelema, and able to do what we can do for their memories and show the light to future generations. Thank you for coming.